Hey guys, and welcome to another PixLab Tutorial Tuesdays. Okay, so this week I'm going to try and be reasonably quick and show you guys something really cool. We're going to be continuing along the path of our little environment system that we've been creating recently. So we're going to be covering quite a few things today, but specifically covering the terrain creation to use with our day-night cycle. As I promised you guys, we were going to keep on going with this tutorial set, if you will, and I'm going to try and do that. So we're going to try further our knowledge a little bit about the terrain creation in Unity 5. It's very fluid and works quite well if you have a very simple terrain that you want to be creating. And the longer you take to create your terrain, the better it will obviously look. Now, I'm not going to be covering the water system or the water animations that I have in this video, but I'm going to show you guys, because if you guys like it, you can just comment below in the video and let me know that you want to see how you do the water, the basic water that I'm using in this tutorial, and if you want to see some advanced water, we'll work on that afterwards. So let me show you guys what we've got. I'm using our default scene from the last couple of tutorials with our moon day-night cycle. If you guys haven't checked out that video, check it out now. I'm going to pop a link on the screen and in the description below. If you can't find it, just head over to my playlists and have a look for it. So I'm going to hit play right now and you guys should see the sunrise and the sunset. There we go. Dynamic shadows. Now please remember that this is at a high speed so that we can get right through this tutorial and not waste too much time. Now it uses a shadow buffer, so it only buffers the shadows in your immediate vicinity, which can be a little bit of a pain in my personal opinion. I do believe you can change those settings, but I haven't. We're going to keep this tutorial pretty simple, pretty basic. Overall, I'm very happy with it. I think it looks really good. We're just using some very basic trees that come with the speed trees that come with the terrain asset, and all of what I'm using today are in the terrain assets or the environment assets, standard assets that come with Unity 5. So let me do a little bit of a flyover here for you guys. I'm going to just open up my scene a little bit. So as you guys can see, I've just created a nice little terrain. I've done some basic texturing and I've added a whole bunch of trees. Now these trees are pretty much the same tree model over and over again, except that speed tree basically generates slightly random tree every time as it's placed on the terrain. Now again, I'm going to say that every texture found in this tutorial is found in the standard assets for the environment package at least. Now let's get right into it. I'm going to open up a brand new scene that has pretty much nothing in it, and if I play this scene, you'll see that the only thing it really has is the sunrise along with the moonrise that you guys have obviously seen in the previous videos, and please do check out that video and have a look at it, and if you like it, please share it, because I think it's pretty cool. There's our moon coming up now. Now remember that our terrain will be basically just covering up that horizon that you see there. So okay, first thing you're going to want to do is we're going to just set up our moonlight here again. We want to set up the intensity a little bit, because I set it down to 0.1 in the last tutorial, and I think it's a bit low when you have terrain in the scene, so 0.35 should do it. We're going to keep our shadows at soft shadows and our sunlight as well on soft shadows. We're going to save the scene quick, and now today, as I said, I'm going to be showing you guys exactly how to do this terrain thing. So let's head right into it. The first thing that you need to do to have a pretty good looking terrain in Unity is obviously create the terrain. So you're going to click on Game Object here at the top, and you're going to go down to 3D Object and click on Terrain. That'll create a very small plane. I think it's 500 by 500 by the default settings, which is really, it is fine, but we're gonna set this up to about 1,000 and 1,000. So on your right side, you've got the inspector panel, and let me familiarize you with the terrain asset, if you will. Firstly, you have raise and lower height tool, which allows you to select various brush brushes, and you can raise and lower the terrain. Now this is the lowest that the terrain can go right now, so we'll be building up from there. You can also set the terrain to a predefined height, and then you can smooth the terrain. So we've got a paint height button, which is to set the height to a specific height. You've got a smooth height button, which smooths out the terrain according to the brush that you've selected. We can paint textures, we can add trees, and we can add some details. Now we're not going to talk about any of those right now because I'm going to work through them step by step with you guys in a second. Just click on the settings button, terrain settings, which is the little gear at the end, and then scroll all the way down. You've got some settings here, which is draw, pixel area, cast shadows. You want to leave all of that as standard. I'm not going to mess around with these at all. Later on you can play with wind settings if you want a bit of wind on your island or world, whatever you want. For right now we're just going to go right down to the resolution settings. Now at your resolution settings, you're going to set that down to 1000 width and 1000 length, and then in your height you're going to set it down, I think I made a mistake there. Going to set it up to about 750. That's the highest that the terrain can go. Now you'll notice that when you click on your terrain, it's still a bit off center from where the rest of the world's 0 point is. So you want to set the position on X to -500, which will sort of center align it, and then you want to set down your skip Y because that's height, and then set your Z value to -500. Ooh, -500 again. That'll give you the terrain as it should be. Now I have two problems right now with this. This is fine because as you can see on our horizon here, it sort of blurs away. Now in my last scene you didn't see that, mainly because the terrain was a bit small. So if you want to set that up so that people can't see the edges of the terrain, you should probably do that, and it works quite well. Now the next thing you're gonna want to do is go to your main camera, and as I'm sure you guys will remember, we had a problem in the last video with the clipping on our moon. This happens again in this video because the moon is just outside of reach. So what we're actually going to do is, well, let's play it quick and see if that's the case with this scene. I do think I made my terrain a little bigger on the last video, or on the last scene. So we're just going to check that quick, and let's just see here. We're definitely getting there, and there's a sunset, but you see no moon. So what I want you guys to do is go to main camera, and then on your clipping you're going to double that to 2200. Let's just make it 2300 for the sake of it. That should give you a full view of everything. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is you're going to want to create a 3D object. So game object, and then 3D object plane, and you're going to want to set the position to 0 and scale it up to double the size of your actual terrain. But they aren't exactly identical, so divided by I think 100 or something like that. So just play around with it. I don't know. Scale at 100 I think worked for me. That matched 1000 in the terrain. So I'm going to set that up to 250. Why not? Because we might as well just get that extra 50 on each length. And then you're going to just rename it to water. Now I've already got my water text, my water material set up here. I'll show you what it basically is. It's just a standard material set to transparent with a color blue and a slight transparency to it, and then I just added a little normal map to it and tiled the normal map to 50 by 50. You're going to drag that onto your water, and that should give you sort of something like that, which gives you that nice sort of, you know, ripple in the water, which is quite cool. And then I have a script, a very special basic script, which seems to work quite well. So okay, obviously my camera is a bit low at the moment. We're going to just pull it up a little, and if I hit play, you guys should see the water ripples across the screen now. Obviously the world is in the way there, but that doesn't really matter. Okay, so that's just my basic little water script which I created for this tutorial. Now next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to drag this water up just a little bit. Okay, great stuff. Then you're going to select your terrain. So we've selected our terrain, and I'm actually going to switch off the water for this part. So I'm just going to toggle it off and select the terrain. And then the next thing you're going to want to do, you could either start with just painting random shapes onto the terrain, getting the shape of your world right. But we're going to add a base texture first. So in your terrain assets panel here on the right side, you'll see there's the little brush. You're going to click on that and it says paint texture. And then you're going to go down here to edit textures, which is just right down here where it says no textures, terrain textures defined, edit textures, click add a texture. Then you've got some options here. You can select the albedo texture and the normal texture. Now we're just going to go, and again, all of these textures are available with the terrain assets or the environment assets, and we're going to set up a very basic sand texture, which again does come with this environment pack. So we're just going to select sand albedo, and it has no normal. Now down here you can set up the metallic value of the texture, the smoothness of the texture, and then you can say size. Now down here we want to set the scaling or the tiling of it down to about 50. The reason for that is that we don't want it to be too tiley. It shouldn't look like it's been tiled. So that gives us a pretty cool starting point. That gives us sand, and if I toggle on the lights, you'll see that it gets really dark in my scene. It's because my lights are already set up a certain way. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is go to raise or lower heights tool, which is the first tool on that little terrain panel, and it says raise or lower heights. Click to raise, hold down shift to lower. So shift is your down, and if you just click, it will pull up the heights. Now I'm going for a sort of island. This could be anything that you really wanted it to be. There are some really cool brushes here, and I'm going to try work through all of them and show you my sort of workflow for the best kind of worlds here. So our opacity should always be at around halfway, 50, unless you get into the fine tweaking of things. I set my brush size quite large so that I can get the base shape of the world down. I'm going to select the second brush preset. That'll give me a slightly harder fall off, or a less softened edge on the brush. The further you go, the harder that edge is, and it can create some pretty cool effects, but for the most part we're going to just be using the second brush preset. And then I'm going to just sort of start getting some shapes down here. I'm going to sort of say, okay, let's add some cliffs and hills over here down the side of the island. And again, don't worry about the edges of your terrain, because it's probably not going to be visible once we add the water over it. And you could just extend your terrain and simply work in the middle if you really were bothered by that. This is very much visually just supposed to look really good from a visual aspect right now. You guys can go further and take it a level further. So you'll notice that what I'm doing right now is I'm just getting some block shapes down for my island sort of space, and now I want to create some hills coming out of that mountain area, cliff area that I've got, and into some more sort of beachy areas if you want. So you'll notice that what I'm doing now is I'm using just alternating between shift click and normal click to elevate or decrease the height of each section. So that gives me a pretty cool shape, and I'm pretty happy with where that's going right now. I'm going to add some more hills over here, so we sort of have like a bank going on here, and then I'm going to add a little bit more height to the sides. Again, this doesn't really matter too much. And then I'm going to switch to the softer brush and sort of scale down and get in there with the sort of, as I said, the beach areas here, and that should give me pretty decent effects. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to switch to the third icon here, which is the smoothing tool, which has like a little raindrop above the hills, and I'm going to set my brush size quite large and then just roll over it, and that you'll see has a very minimal but a very good effect on the terrain, sort of smooths out any details that you've got going on there. Now back to our raise or low height terrain. Now in order to get these cliffs looking really sharp and harsh, I'm going to use some of these other brush presets. Now quite a way down there's this sort of star-shaped brush preset. You'll see it on my screen above, and that is quite great for doing like cliffs and hills. I'm going to set it down to about the size of the actual cliff width, and then you'll notice that once I start clicking, it sort of creates that sharp edge. Now that's just a brush preset, and you can even define your own brush presets and really have some fun with it. If you're a bit of a Photoshop geek and you feel like you can do these yourself, then have some fun with it. You know, you could really get some pretty cool effects. Now, from the little bit of research I've done over sort of the harsh environments that I'm trying to create here, you'll notice that these cliffs sort of run off in like almost like a crow's leg on a plane, if you will. So I'm sort of running it down, and you'll notice that I'm doing these like sharp ridges that come down, and I'm using this tool because it's really good for creating like these natural ridges and crevices that I really feel like that's what my environment needs. Now if you were creating a more soft and like lively feel for your terrain, you'd probably use one of these other brushes. You can really have some fun with them and play around. I probably won't cover all of them, but I'm going to try and cover a few of them now while we're working through this together. So I'm quite liking that. That's looking quite good. Now I really feel like there should just add that little bit of a ridge, and this is what I'm talking about. You've got to add these little ridges to your actual world so that it looks more realistic. And yeah, I quite like that. I think it's getting there now. And then next I'm going to show you some of these other texturing tools that really increase the bumpiness of your surfacing and so on. But first I've got to just finish up my ridges over this side of the island, and that's really looking quite cool. I'm very happy with that. Now once you get down to the ground level or the surface area of this island, I kind of wanted to smooth out a little bit. So I'm going to use, now if you look down here you can see that it's already got quite a nice little view or look going on about it right now with the cliffs. So I'm going to use one of these other little brush presets. You'll notice that some of them are a lot more squared than others. Some of them have very strange effects. Some of them simply bubble up your model. Some of them have these very weird looking loops and ridges going on. So it really depends on what you want, but I have found that, I think it was this one, if I drag down my scale a little bit and pull down my opacity, that I can get my own little lumps coming and sort of smoothing out into what I like to refer to as the plain section, or the softer section of the island. Now I'm just going to add a little bit of roughness all around the island, because let's face it, realistically you're never going to find a perfectly smooth hill unless it's completely sand. So I'm pretty much happy with that. That's pretty much what I want. Now the next thing is I'm going to just select the second brush set again, hit my opacity up a little bit, and then I'm going to change down the size. Now what I want to do now is I kind of want to create a river that runs in from the ocean through and then splits sort of here, creates a little pool here, and then runs out on the other side over there. So I'm going to hold down shift and sort of cut into this island that I've created already. And then I first want to sort of taper it into the ocean here at where it starts, and then I'm going to set down my brush size a little more, and basically I'll be doing this as I go, and you got to run it down all the way to 0 for this to really work the way you'd expect it to once we reattach that water again. So that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty much happy with that. The split there. Okay, we want to sort of sharpen that edge a little bit, and then here we're going to have our natural pool that forms sort of around the cliff area here. So that's pretty much what we want there, and I like that. I'm going to take the brush size down a little bit more so that I get almost a stream of water running through here instead of a river so much. And let's see, I'm going to run it through here. So again, I'm just holding down shift as I do this. That'll create the effect that I want. And I'm trying to sort of go with whatever the island shape is. I try not to fight the terrain too much. You want it to create a sort of natural look. So that works quite well. You know, just sort of follow the creases that you've already created on the world. I'm going to increase my brush size a little bit again, because here we'll be close to the ocean and you'll have to taper it out anyway. So that'll create a very cool little river system. Now we're going to switch to our sharp brush, or our coarser brushes again, and sort of just create this coarse ridge here in our little valley, so that we have that sort of cliff-like effect and feel as you're coming off the riverbed or side here. On the other side though, what I want to do is create a sort of a slope in, so that maybe a little small settlement is here. So I'm using my smooth tool again here, and I'm going to increase that. It's not working all that great. I definitely think they should probably look at that and create a more natural smoothing algorithm, because that is not working the way I would like to. Anyway, so just holding down shift again here in our normal raise lower tool, I can quickly sort of get that shape down that I want. And you'll notice when I add in the water again that this will look a lot better. Now I'm pretty much happy with this. That's going to be the basis of our little island. Now I like to be quite meticulous in how I do this and where I do this, but I think what's quite cool to add is like almost like these stone pillars that are coming out of the water, as if the mountain used to run a bit further. Now you can really use any shape here again, but I'm just going to be using this shape to get these sort of sharp point that come out of the water, and that sort of creates like these like a reef effect once the water comes back onto it. So that looks pretty much good. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. We're going to want to texture it relatively quickly, so we're going to use the built-in texturing system, which is just awesome, as I've said before. I'm going to go down here to edit textures once again, and we're going to add texture. We've been through this before. You can add the albedo texture and you can add the normal texture. Now we're actually going to be adding the normal texture today. So we're going to add this cliff albedo specular, which is down here, which again is found in your standard environment assets, and then scroll down and find the normals, which is just called cliff normals in this case. Set your scaling up to, I think I used 50 by 50 again here, and then select a soft brush. Set down your opacity quite a bit, because we want to sort of slowly move into it. And then we're going to start with all of these cliffs. Select it obviously, and then we're going to just start painting, which is really cool. I think really adds a level that I just haven't seen yet out of any other texturing, you know, or built-in texturing systems, that you can just sort of paint it on. You don't have to export height maps or anything, and you can export the height map, and you can even export the raw model if you ever felt that you wanted to take this into Blender and sort of edit it there and texture it yourself there from there, or texture it in Photoshop. You could, in other words, you could do that. Now what I'm going to show you now is if I zoom in here and I zoom in close enough, you'll notice that the actual, once I switch on these settings, the normals do influence the way the texture looks, and you'll see this a bit better once we play it and we set up our camera angles and all of that as well. So I'm just sort of painting all of this very rocky terrain into this cliff normal, even the parts that are running into the ocean, because if you've had a look at some islands, a lot of the rockery sort of runs into the ocean, doesn't stop as soon as it hits water. So I'm just going to sort of be doing that now, and all along the ridges. Looks pretty good to me so far. And then that's why we set up our base texture as sand, because of the fact that the ocean, obviously all of that has sand underneath it, and the islands obviously benefit from that and having that as the base texture. Now again, you can use any of the other brush presets as well to paint your textures. I mean, you could do like these little lumps of texturing just in between wherever you felt like it. So switch brushes and mess around a little bit, and you'll probably find one of them that you feel works best for you. I just find like that the smooth brush sort of gets everything done anyway, so I don't play around with it too much. I kind of texture it all with this brush. Here and there I do change up, but it's very seldom. Now that's pretty good. I'm pretty much happy with that. There's just this one mountain here, mountain range left, that I want to do with some cliffs. Very good. Okay, then we're going to set up another texture quick. Add the texture, select it, and then scroll down. Somewhere here there is a grass and grassy rock albedo. Add that one, and we're going to change this setting down to 40 and 40. There is no normal texture for it. Select that brush, and then everywhere between the rock and grass, which we're going to be adding now, you're going to want to add this. So I bring down my size a little bit, my brush size just a little bit, so I leave some space for it. Now if I zoom in, you'll notice that that grassy rock sort of runs into the cliffs quite smoothly, which I quite like as well. Again, it's all about your personal preference, and you guys go ahead and play around with it as you see fit. So you'll notice that now I'm just going to continue the painting job, and there's not too much I can explain here really. Again, at this point you sort of have to just play around with it and kind of feel it out and sort of decide what you're going to go with and texture it as you see fit. You can also add your own textures, just make sure that they're tileable so that you don't have any funny artifacts. And that gives you the freedom to really create some more stylistic effects as well, adding any texture that is tileable and being able to paint it onto your terrain. And you can set this target strength setting down here and then that will blend the textures a bit more. So you'll notice that I've got like sand moving into rock, and I can really blend it a bit more. I just find that the target strength just sort of works because of the soft brush already, so I don't really have to do too much again, which is cool. So yeah, I'm just sort of going about my business here and just filling in those blanks. So now I'll notice we've got a very rocky and sandy terrain. We need to add some grass, so we're going to add one more texture here, and we're going to scroll down, and somewhere here is a grass hill albedo. Set this to 35 by 35. Any bigger and it starts to look sort of low res. And then here I'm going to set up my brush size and down my target strength, because I want to fade it in a bit more so that I can sort of determine where I want less grass and where I want more. For me, the setting that works best is around 0.75. That'll work. Yeah. So you'll notice that there is now some sand in between the grass. It's very faint, but it is there, and it does make somewhat of a difference. And that's basically it. We're just sort of gonna go and texture out our hills now, which is the next sort of step for us. So that's pretty good. I'm pretty much happy with that section down to there, and then there's a hill that I missed, of course. Okay, there I painted into the riverbed, so I'm going to just click on my sand texture and bring it back, which works great. It's really good tool, really nice to work with. Okay, I've missed this entire cliff, so I'm just going to go to my sand or my rock and grass texture and sort of fade it in between the two, just like so. Now I'm going to select these sort of spotted ones here, spotted brush, and I'm just going to add some grass in between all of these rocky areas. That'll just add that level of some random growth going on in between. Back to my soft brush. So again, I could pointlessly and bore you to death, but there's nothing much I can say about this part of the tutorial. It's pretty much self-explanatory. You've got to decide what it is that you're trying to get out of your sort of system here, or your island, and then just do that. Okay, so I almost feel like the grass is still a bit low res for me. It's like it's just not doing what I wanted to do. So the cool thing about the terrain editing tool is you don't have to redo all your work now. Just double click on the texture here and it'll open up the panel again, and you can set that up. So we can do 40 by 40. We can actually set this down so that the texture becomes smaller. And I think 30 by 30 is going to work the best. So that looks kind of good. I'm pretty much happy with that. There's one more texture I want to add, so I'm going to click edit textures, add a texture, and then I'm going to go down to it's called something like muddy rocky albedo. There we go. And then you can add the normal for this, which is muddy rocky normals, and we're going to set the scale of this up to 40 by 40. I think that'll work fine. Click on that, and then all along our riverbeds I kind of want to add this, but you'll notice that now with the normals it sort of looks really harsh, which is fine for the center pieces. So I'm adding a very dark center line into the river. This will really add an aesthetic to your underwater world once we get there. But it's very dark for the sides of the riverbed. So you'll notice that I'm literally just doing the center piece of the riverbed, and then up to there where the river obviously meets its end, and then we're just going to run quick brush down here into those cliffs there. Look pretty good. And then the next thing that I'm going to do, set down the target strength to about 0.3, 0.4 should work. And then I'm going to, okay, a bit more than that. And then I'm going to actually paint in the texture on the side, and you'll notice that those are now a little lighter than the rest, and we can set up our brush size, sort of fade it in between the two, which will create quite a, I don't want to say realistic effect, but it'll be a bit more believable. Now again, I'm just going to do this entire ridge here so that it sort of fades into our muddy texture on the roof. So that's pretty good, and just like that we've got our little world done. Now the fun part, I get to actually switch on the water, and you'll see that our little island now sort of looks like something. So I'm going to click on my water and I'm just going to untoggle it, and then I have to just sort of set up the height because it's really high right now, and I really just wanted to fill those rivers, so around about there. It should work if I check into these crevices. That looks pretty good to me. I'm pretty happy with that. Make sure that the entire stream is visible. I like that. I think that's awesome. So that's pretty much it. We've got our little world set up. Now the next step in our terrain modeling tutorial is to go ahead and add the place trees. We're going to place trees onto our continent, or onto our little island. So we're going to add the tree by clicking on edit trees down here, just like you were doing in the edit texture section, and we're going to add a tree, and we're going to select select any tree you really want. I'm just going to go sort of like a piney tree. Okay, set the maximum height up a little bit, because I feel like that sort of works best. Set down the brush size and literally just paint on the trees. I actually feel like the max height's a little much, so just do this. Yeah, there we go. Max height, that's much better. Feels much more natural to me. And these sort of pine trees, almost they sort of grow everywhere, and I'm going for a sort of temperate climate, not a tropical, but there is also a palm tree in there, so you could use literally any tree that you kind of want to use, and sort of go with it. It's your own little thing, you know. Again, up to your own sort of selection, choice, and whatnot. You don't have to be doing exactly what I am doing here either. So there we go. Adding in some trees onto the hills in between. That gives us, if you look down here, we're getting some really cool results down there. And I'm adding trees onto the cliff sides. General rule of thumb for me is sort of let these trees grow everywhere except on top of the cliffs. That creates a pretty cool effect. So up the sides of the cliffs, fine. Generally anywhere where that grassy rock texture is, these trees should be able to grow. Also obviously not too close to the waterline for realism and all of that. Other than that, looks pretty cool. Very much happy with that. Just going to finish this up, and then I'm going to show you guys the grass tool or the details tool where you can add rocks and all of that. Now there are no standard rocks, or at least that I could find, that can come with this terrain pack, but there is a base grass texture which is pretty cool, pretty useful. I've been using it quite often. Yeah, so I don't want to add any trees to these cliff ranges. Keep my trees pretty much to the one side of the island, and that works pretty well for me. Now let's click on, so you'll notice that was shaped tree, and again you can click down shift to erase the trees and control to erase the selected tree type. I'm not going to show you guys that, just play around with it and find your way. In the detail section, we're going to click edit details again and add a grass texture or add a detail mesh. Now a detail mesh would be rockery or anything like that. Even shrubs could be here. Add grass texture, that has to be a specific texture. You can select the colors and set everything up. Now we're just going to go down to the sort of grass font. We're going to select that one and add it. That's all you really need. Now painting this onto your world will not give you any results from a distance. You'll notice I'm clicking right now and you can hardly see it. But if I hit F while I'm working on this, okay, it used to be that way. If I zoom in at least, I can see the grass texture. Now I can honestly say that I don't think these look good at all. So we definitely need to set up something, and I'm going to just use the colors that are available on this map to sort of set it all up for me. Select the dry color and the healthy color to create a sort of cool effect and cool feel. Going to switch off billboard. I don't need it to billboard. I'm going to set that to 0.2, 0.1. Actually, let's make that 1, make 2, max width, noise spread 0.5. So yeah. Then if I play the scene without maximizing, I should be able to see the light move through this grass, and then decide if what I have going on is good enough. And you'll notice that the wind on our world obviously influences the grass, and that creates again a pretty cool effect. If I switch on my lighting here in the scene, that looks awesome. I actually really like that. However, I feel like the density of this is maybe a bit much. I'm going to leave that patch there though. So target strength, and then if I zoom in here, switch off my secondary lighting panel, and I zoom in, there we go, much more far, spread in between. And then I'm just going to set up my brush size here and sort of paint all over the place, sort of randomly and sporadically without even going to look at it. And then I'm going to zoom in and have a look at it and make sure that it sort of looks good. And I'm only painting, you'll notice I'm only really painting grass on the sections that have the full grass texture. Try not to paint anywhere else, but it doesn't really make too much of a difference, I don't think. Again, this is rough work, and you guys can go further and work harder at it. If I zoom in, you'll notice that we have a lot of grass going on here, which is cool. it's exactly what you want in the grass sections. You don't have to have it, it's up to you. And you can change those colors and make it look a little better as well. Now, as far as the settings are concerned on the terrain, you can set the wind speed and all of that, as I've discussed before. But in this case, it's sort of unnecessary. We're not going to. I'm going to leave that to you guys to experiment with. Now, we know that our moon's coming up directly behind this terrain, so if we move directly forward, directly to the right, then we should still see the moon come up. And I just want to sort of get a position where I can see this little river that I've created, and move it a little bit to the side, rotate that camera around. You'll notice I get a very, very cool looking scene here. I'm going to try and sort of position myself in between the trees and rotate slightly up and slightly over here, and we should see the moonrise. I'm going to set up my focal or my field of view a little wider, so hopefully we'll see that. We'll see our moonrise and sunset. But again, when you're playing the game, you'll discover things like this. You'll discover that you see the moon rising and all of that. The fact that it's there, that's what really counts. So I'm going to try wrap up this tutorial right now by hitting the play button. Hopefully everything goes according to plan, and you guys will see that it's pretty cool. Works pretty well. You'll notice that there's water over here, and hopefully you'll be able to see into the water if I've done everything right. So there we go. Again, the world speed is maybe a bit fast, but we've got grass going on, trees moving, shadows, and we saw the sunrise, and we should now be able to see the moon rise as well, and it still casts a very light shadow. And yeah, it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it, and I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Again, if you guys haven't checked out the day-night tutorial yet, please do check both of those tutorials out, and keep watching this series, if you will. Let's call it a series at least. And let me give you another perspective of the world here. If I just pull up and over into the ridges section here. So I'm going to just pull up. Sorry guys, I feel like I should show you the entire world, sort of like so, and then just pull in the field view. Now notice there you can see a little edge of the terrain. That's what I was talking about, but again, it doesn't really make too much of a difference. I kind of just want to drag it in and show you guys the terrain here. So yeah, as I was saying, please do hit subscribe, like, comment, all of that stuff, that great stuff. And if you guys did enjoy this tutorial, please share it with your friends. Like, comment below. Yeah, what else can I say? I think in the next tutorial I'm going to try and do a more realistic water shader and animation sort of toolkit, if you want to call it that. And hopefully then you guys can learn how to do the water. This water is sort of gentle and slow. I'm going to try and create a more deformed water mesh next time around. Please hit subscribe, hit like, comment below if you liked the video, share, like, and all of that fancy jazz. We hit 100 subscribers. I think I'm rolling on 113 right now. So thanks to everyone so much for hitting the subscribe button and spending your time on this channel. I really do appreciate it, and I love making these videos for you guys. Please also make your suggestions below of the next tutorials that you would like to see. Yeah, subscribe, and keep learning.